Think of beds, think of Ben. We do beds. Divan beds, bunk beds, storage beds, beds for your kids, beds for your granny. 3 floors of beds. This month only, Mattress Madness. Any mattress cheaper would be illegal. Ben's Beds, High Street, Chandwell, opposite the Earl Chandfield. Tell them Ben sent you.
Welcome to Chandwell. My name's Michael, and I've completed the 2 facades of the Old Town Hall on my N-gauge model railway layout. In this episode, we'll look at how I approached the window detail, embedding the town hall onto the street, the details around the entrances, and the cellar, how I made the back walls, and how I added the quoins. I wanted windows full of cheap and cheerful detail, bright signs, sale bunting, and whitewashed lettering on the glass, so I drew them all out in Inkscape. A semi-transparent black rectangle on top of a real bed shop interior makes it really dark, and then I simply add shapes and text on top. When this is printed and stuck behind the glazing, it gives just the effect I was after, and it looks surprisingly 3D as well. To help me get the quoins, cellar and downspouts in the right place, I thought it worth getting the building embedded into its landscape now. Using the template I drew a few episodes ago, I stuck the ground onto card. I wrapped the edge of the pavement in Scalescene's pavement texture. I didn't do a very good job of wrapping it around the curve at the end, because I made the V-shaped slices too large. But I realised that I won't ever notice this, so I decided to leave it as it is. With the ground held roughly in place, I glued the building onto the ground using printed guidelines to help me get it in the right place. I recessed the guidelines by 1mm so that they were guaranteed to be inside the walls rather than visible on the pavement. Ben's Beds has retained its fancy Victorian fanned glazing. I made this using the sticky label method that I often talk about. I used simple rectangles of card to represent an inner vestibule, and a suitably tacky sign on the back wall. And then I made some sticky label method doors and placed these on top of some interior detail. And then some grand wooden doors are glued to the inside to complete the scene. It's very simply made, but very effective. It really does look like a modern entrance inside a much grander Victorian building. It's always 11:41 AM in Chandwell, so around the corner, Club Passion is firmly shut. A simple fire escape is added within one entrance, and the other is roller shuttered. I see Scotty has been passed to add his own mark to the shutters. The gap for the cellar revealed quite a drop. We didn't want the drunken revellers of Chandwell to fall down, so what do? I added a simple wall made of card, and then used these scale model scenery laser-cut pedestrian railings. Placed side on, they make the perfect grille to cover the cellar. The gap was just the right size to hold them in place once they were squeezed in. I used scale model scenery Juliet balcony railings left over from my Royal Scot build to give an attractive decorative fence to the top of the wall. It's a nice nod by Club Passion to the original Victorian building. The back walls join at an acute angle. We don't want a gap where the card joins, so I needed to cut the join at an angle. Keeping my knife angled downwards, I very carefully and lightly cut through the card at a shallow angle. I've never worked out how to do this keeping the blade pointing away from my fingers, so I took extreme care not to put any pressure on the blade, and I did it very, very gently. It took about 20 strokes to get through the 1mm card. Once done though, the card joins really nicely and leaves no gap along the tight angle. They just drop into place like this. The texture will go on the wall and over the top of the existing roof elements, so I filed down the slightly overhanging roof with a cheap nail file. I colour the edges of the texture with a watercolour pencil, and then attach the texture to the wall with PVA glue. The quoins took the longest time this week. I drew simple pale and dark lines on top of the texture to represent a groove, and printed them with a folding guideline. Because they need to be scored on the back, I make 2 slits at the ends of the guidelines, turn the paper over and then use the back of my scalpel to add a score line. A tight fold can then be obtained along the line. Next, the component is cut out and the notches removed. A flick of the scalpel at the end sends the little squares of waste paper binging all over the place. Use watercolour paint to take away the white edges of the paper, and then use PVA glue to gently place them onto the building. It's important to get them the right way up. If the dark line and the white line are the wrong way around, it's not immediately obvious, but you certainly can tell it's just not quite right. I know this because I got the first few backwards and had to redo them. I finished the whole thing off with a coat of matte AK interactive varnish. This seems to bed it all down and somehow makes the whole thing feel more solid. I'm very, very pleased with how the town hall is coming along. I'm really excited to be starting the fabulous tower at last. Here's a look at the last tower I made, the awfully brutal market clock tower. Come back next week to see how I get on with the much more appealing cylindrical Victorian one. Channel members will see my progress on Sunday. Press this silver button for more info if you're interested. If you're not a member, don't worry, you won't miss out. Just watch next Friday when I should hopefully have some exciting progress to share. Until then, thank you for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.